This podcast is brought to you by Cash App, the easy way to send, spend, save, and invest with friends. Does everyone in your friends group have a cash tag? That's money. And because Cash App connects you effortlessly with your friends and your finances, I would like to take this moment to shout out all the friends who are on Cash App. Shout out to the friend whose cash tag is learning to bake, and to the one who helped you take out your AC out of your window. A big shout out to the friend who owes you $38. Shout out to the friend who will only pay you back in Bitcoin, and the one who always suggests theme restaurants. And shout out to Tommy, who I love watching squirm every time I mention his love for the Denver Nuggets.
And the new one who recently started working in real estate and now says location, location all the time. Shout out to the friend who withholds repayment until you finally agree. We said Leo last time, so we're going to say Jay-Z is the greatest of all time. And the one who can't dance. Shout out to the friend who sends gift reactions entirely too much for anyone's taste. And the one who thinks you're related. And to the friend who drew their cat on their custom cash card. Shout out to you, sir.
Cash App is the easy way for you and all your friends to enjoy sending, spending, saving, investing, splitting, tipping, donating, gifting, or just pressing buttons to look busy, all with the #1 finance app in the App Store. That's money. That's Cash App. Download Cash App from the App Store or Google Play Store today to create your own cash tag. Welcome to the Old Man of the Three with JJ Redick and Tommy Alter, presented by Cash App and brought to you by 342 Productions. This is episode 136. Lauri Markkanen. Tommy, we finally got a Jazz player on from this team. They've gotten off to a good start. It was a great start.
Yep.
It's a good start. Lauri in particular is having a career year in his 6th season. It's amazing to me to watch him thrive in this offense. It's such a good fit for him.
Well, this has to be one of the best stories of the season so far, don't you think? Just his emergence as a guy that, I think if the All-Star game was tomorrow, he would probably be on that team. And we're going to, get into this with him later, but there were periods in his career where he had not figured it out in the league. And so seeing this jump has been really impressive.
And he's talked about this in a number of interviews. In fact, he recently played the Bulls, had a big game against them. And he said, I've gotten smarter and I've just gotten better. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer for guys to figure it out. He's still only 25 years old. The Jazz, by the way, they're sitting at 12-11 right now, 9th place in the Western Conference. I think it was like 9 days ago. They were in first place or tied for first place in the West. They're on a 5-game losing streak. All of those games, Mike Conley has not played. So certainly his return to the lineup at some point will have a big impact on this team. His steadiness, his playmaking, his leadership. They're definitely missing all of those things right now. But I still think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tommy, I still think at 12-11, that's still one of the best surprises in the NBA.
Yes. Well, so we've talked about them a bit. We talked about Lauri with Tyrese. What do you think has surprised teams the most outside of Lauri, I would say, because, we're going to get into that a lot with him, but what else about, because my thing is their depth. And I think people probably underestimated that, but is there anything in particular about them that you think has kind of jumped the rest of the league, not just the Western Conference, but really the rest of the league in these first 23 games?
Well, you mentioned the depth. I would say Malik Beasley coming off the bench, being able to give you 30, almost playing the role that Jordan Clarkson has played for the last few seasons in Utah. Now Jordan Clarkson has primarily been in the starting lineup. He's having a good season as well. This is where I think losing Mike Conley hurts, because it does hurt their depth, obviously, but the leadership component, outside of Clarkson, Kelly Olynyk, they've got young guys that are still sort of figuring out how to win and how to be impactful, not just putting up numbers, but winning basketball games. Like I said, this is one of the most surprising teams in the league. According to DraftKings Sportsbook, to make the playoffs preseason, the Jazz were at plus 2,200. They're currently at plus 165.
Yeah.
So clearly a lot of people right now think that they will make the playoffs. They've received 26% of the money to win the Northwest Division, which I think is crazy. And when we talk about Lauri, he has the second best odds right now to win Most Improved Player at plus 400, only trailing our guy Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's at minus 160.
What do you think, as we sit in late November, early December, what do you think about their playoff chances? And we've talked a bunch about the parity in the West overall, but where do they go the next 2 months?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So when I look at the Western Conference right now, I really believe this, and unless there's a trade or unless there's a significant injury, I think the Los Angeles Lakers are the 12th best team. Right now, Dallas is in 11th place, and there's a bunch of teams that have between 9 and 11 losses. The Mavs, the Timberwolves, the Utah Jazz, the Golden State Warriors, the Kings, the Blazers, and the Clippers. So I think the Clippers, assuming Kawhi is healthy, I think they probably get in. The Blazers, the Kings, the Jazz, the Wolves, and the Mavs, those are the teams that are going to be jostling for those positions, I think 7 through 10.
And it's obvious, but, health is, Mike with the Jazz. Towns is now going to be out, I think, 4 to 6 weeks for Minnesota, and it's going to be tough for them, I think, to sort of keep up with the rest of this group without him. And so they almost have to just kind of tread water. Is there a thing with the Jazz, we're going to get into some of this with Lauri in terms of them shedding assets. They traded for 7 first-round picks this summer, shedding assets to try to lose, to try to get a higher draft pick. But is there a concern when you're thinking about their playoff chances of this is a team that's still going to be selling with some of these veteran guys?
They certainly picked up a lot of draft picks going forward in the Rudy Gobert trade and with Donovan Mitchell. There's definitely a chance that if they're hovering around 10th or 11th, that they maybe send Mike Conley or Jordan Clarkson. I know Ainge loves Kelly Olynyk, but he's got some real value. Malik Beasley, of course, has real value. It's interesting. All of these guys have talked about how great it has been playing for Utah and how they hope it's a long-term thing. Markkanen has talked about this. Malik Beasley has talked about this. Obviously, Conley's at a different stage in his career, and I'm sure he wants to win a championship, and I'm not sure the Jazz are there right now. So I think it comes down to health, because I think talent-wise and with the coaching talent as well with Will Hardy, I think this roster and the coaching staff, they're good enough for the rest of the year to hover somewhere between 6 and 11. I don't think that's out of the question. So I think they're going to have a real chance to make the playoffs, or at least the play-in game, if that's their goal. Again, you can get all this information on DraftKings Sportsbook. See show notes for details. One last housekeeping note. Just a reminder, we have a newsletter, a farewell to takes. Tommy and I gave some love to some people this week. We talked about how many times Luka Doncic is getting blitzed in pick and rolls. It's over double the next closest player, and why that has such a repercussion on the Dallas Mavericks offense. And we also, Tommy did at least.
We talked about our boy.
Your boy, Aaron Gordon. Tommy gave Aaron Gordon some love. So you can subscribe to that either at 342.com or through any of our social channels. We also have The Old Man and the Three Things, which is our exclusive podcast on Wondery and Amazon Music. It's available to subscribers for both of those platforms. This week, we broke down the Western Conference and who we think the best teams are. Fascinating conversation. Without further ado, let's get to our conversation with Lauri Markkanen. All right, let's welcome in Lauri Markkanen. Lauri, thank you so much for joining us. It's a real treat to have you on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
We have a lot to get into. There is one thing I want to start with. This was something that was tweeted out a few years ago by Frank Isola, who has a radio show. He's a ESPN personality. He's a writer for the New York media here. But he tweeted out that Brian Scalabrine told him that when you got drafted, you asked Scal if it was okay to wear his number 24. And there's a lot of questions I have around this. Is this a true story?
Yeah, it was like a pre-draft. I can't remember if it was what company it was, but it was Scal was there, and I worked out for Boston, and he was rebounding from him. So I had the relationship. I knew him a little bit before that, and then he gave me his jersey back then. I was like, yeah. I was struggling what jersey number to wear in Chicago. All of my options were taken, so then I was like, yeah, I'll just wear that if
Scal will let you.
Yeah.
I think I just want to note here that Scal retired after 2012, which was his last season with the Bulls. And you were drafted in 2017, and Scal in 2 years with the Bulls. And I love Scal. He's my guy, but he averaged 4 minutes a game and 1 point a game. I don't think he's the type of player that you need permission from to wear their jersey.
It was more of a, I don't know how serious it was, but it was a funny story for sure. But yeah, I did shoot him a text after that. So,
Larry, who did you watch when you were growing up? We're going to get into some of the competition, just in Finland in general. But like, who were your favorite players, just as a kid?
yeah, I wasn't able to watch a lot of like actual games with the time difference, and just they didn't have it on TV, so it was a lot of just highlight based. I started watching 2006. It was a lot of Kobe and D Wade, and then LeBron came into the picture a little bit later when I grew up. So, and of course, then I grew a little bit taller and I started watching Dirk a little bit more.
How popular is basketball in Finland? Where does it sort of rank in terms of popularity in sports culture?
It's definitely getting bigger, but I would say it's the third biggest sport. We got hockey and soccer, I would say, in front of it. So.
Tommy, I don't know if you found this in your research, and I hope this is correct, but Lauri became the highest scoring Finnish player in NBA history, and he did that in his rookie year.
I remember that.
Yeah. What the sort of your parents? I believe your parents both played. What was sort of the competition like? I know you played. Believe it was a second tier team in Finland. But what was the competition like when I assume you played it internationally, U16s, U15s in Europe and whatnot. But how difficult was the competition within Finland?
Yeah, it was like the second highest league. We played with a high school team that we recruited. It was like academy that was all our age national team players, and it was more based on our practice rather than actual games. So we didn't play the top league to be playing against the top teams. We played one time a week against the second tier teams, but it was more about practicing 2 times a day, and it was kind of getting us ready for college. I think that was the main point of it. So I think competition was good. Like they had American players on those second tier teams, like 3 or 4 guys a team. So definitely got the experience against grown men rather than just high school kids. So it was good.
Did you have any interaction with I know you guys are different ages, but like with Luka or any of the other Euro guys who've since come to the league before you got to college? Did you play with them in any kind of organized way or anything like that?
Yeah, Luka is the only one that comes up in my mind. It was before my rookie year. We hosted the EuroBasket 2017 in Finland, and we played Slovenia. I think Luka was 17 at the time when he was on that team. So I think that's the only one I can remember.
Did you know then that he is going to do what he's doing now?
I knew he's going to be great, but I didn't know if he's going to be this good. But he was definitely killing it as a teenager over there already.
Goran Dragic, I believe, got MVP of that EuroBasket in 17, if I'm not mistaken. And you, this past EuroBasket, had 43 in the round of 16. You got your team to the quarterfinals. I was actually with Coach K over the weekend, who coached the USA basketball team for a long time. And we were just kind of trading stories, catching up and whatnot. And he likes to tell this story about the 2006 team when all those guys came in. Jerry Colangelo told them all to leave their egos at the door. And Coach K gets up in front of the team and he's like, this is the one time I'm going to disagree with Jerry. I need you guys to bring your egos. Dwayne, I need you to bring your ego that you have for the Heat. LeBron, I need you to bring your ego that you have for the Cavs. He's like, because when we go play these teams, Pau Gasol, Manu Ginobili, they turn into fucking superheroes. And there is something about you guys going back to your European national teams and just elevating your play. And you were able to do that this past EuroBasket. How much confidence did that give you going into this season?
Oh, it gives a ton. It's the opportunity you get to hoop, and there's really no restrictions. Like I'm bringing the ball up, handling pick and roll, trying to facilitate for other guys and stuff like that. So maybe I haven't been doing that as much in the NBA. So just showing that to other people and myself that I'm able to do that. So just to do it, I think this year's EuroBasket was really high level of basketball. A lot of NBA guys went back. So just being able to do it over there, I think it's easier to carry over here after that.
The other story that I really like, and I couldn't find the verified version of this, but I know this story is real. Spinolas, who absolutely killed the United States in the semifinals of the 2006 World Championships. He's a Greek player, and he comes over to the U.S., and he's playing for the Houston Rockets, and he's trying to get playing time, and he says to Jeff Van Gundy, he's like, I don't understand why I'm not playing. He's like, over in Greece, he's like, I'm fucking Tracy McGrady. And Jeff says back to him, yeah, but in America, Tracy McGrady is Tracy McGrady. You know? And you brought up the restrictions part. And I think that we could have a deeper conversation about this, but I am curious in your sort of own perspective, what has made this year different playing for the Jazz? Because your numbers are up. You've had some really big games, but I think most impressively, your efficiency numbers up. Like the way you're playing and the way you're scoring, you're doing it all. You're cutting, slipping out of pick and rolls, spotting up, attacking closeouts. They're running a lot of pin downs for you, so that you're doing it in a bunch of different ways. So I'm curious, you know, in terms of your growth this year, where do you see that from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it's changed a little bit when I got the year with small forward in Cleveland. I think it kind of helped me play on the perimeter a little bit. And then, of course, like you mentioned, the EuroBasket, just getting that confidence up. And just, I think it's a little bit of everything. We have a great coaching staff, great style of play that I'm always going to give credit to my teammates, because it's not like I'm doing everything off the dribble. They're finding me when I'm open. So I've been able to get to the rim and get some easy ones, and then that obviously helps shooting from the outside as well. So I'm always going to give credit to them and coaches, but I think I've gotten better as a player than I was in Chicago, for example. So just being able to do that stuff off the dribble still. So got him better, but then I think I'm at the right place, the right time too.
Lauri, we were talking about this earlier, you know, speaking of your teammates, you know, we've had Mike Conley on the show, for example, and he's just a guy who has been an elite table setter, you know, in the NBA since he got into the league. Were you a little bit, not that you've played well these guys, so not that you'd be surprised by, you know, their talent or anything like that, but do you feel like maybe the rest of the league and the NBA fan base overall kind of underestimated just how many good players are on this roster right now?
Yeah, definitely. I think I flew in 4 days before training camp since I was playing in summer. And the first practice we had, we were all kind of like, we got a pretty good team. We got a lot of good players on this team. We just got to get on the same page. We got a lot of new guys from different teams. So it's a work in progress, but definitely surprising how easy it's to work with everybody. And you mentioned Mike, obviously. I think he's really great to play with, really easy to talk to and kind of work with, how he sees everything on the floor. So he's been a big reason for our team to be this successful early on.
Yeah, so Mike got hurt 6 games ago. You guys ended up winning that game. You beat Portland that game. He's been out the last 5, and you guys have lost all 5 of those games. What does he mean to the team? What does he do besides just table set that's so important?
I think just getting guys organized, being in the right place. I think our spacing has not been that great, which comes with, we got new lineups that we haven't played with, and we're still trying to figure it out. I think Mike has been doing a great job getting us in the right place, and obviously that limits our turnovers, and we haven't been really great in transition defense this year. So I think it's a combination of, it helps a lot on that offensive end, so we don't get as much in trouble on the defensive end either.
You've only been his teammate for a few months now, but I can't pass this opportunity up, and Tommy's going to kill me. But is Mike Conley the nicest player you've ever played with, just in terms of his kindness?
He's up there for sure.
He's up there. I need to know. We may have dissenting opinion here.
Is he number one?
Is he number one?
I'll put him number one.
Oh, good. Well, Lauri, the backstory of this is JJ claimed when Mike came on the show, everyone has said Mike is number one. Every single person who had met him says he's number one. JJ claimed to Mike's face that actually JJ was nicer than him. And Mike is a nice person, so he didn't laugh at him or criticize him or anything like that. But everyone who's heard that since then said JJ is not in the top 150 to 200 nicest.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to be his teammate, so I can't say about JJ, but Mike's definitely one of the nicest guys I've been around with. So
you would have liked me as a teammate. I would have taken care. I would have been a good vet.
I'm glad I don't have to fall for your shot fake anymore.
You know what though? Here's the thing.
JJ got me in foul trouble when he was in Philadelphia. I remember subbing out like the first 2 minutes of the game because I jumped for his shot fake twice.
Here's the thing. You have to understand there's not as much oxygen up there when you're a 7-footer. And I know that. So you guys, you process things a little slower. So whenever I got to switch with a 7-footer, I use the same move every time. And I just did a quick hard dribble with my right hand and then shot faked. And
I remember that.
I think it's like 95% conversion rate on that to get a foul and go to the free throw line.
Yeah. So you've made me better as a basketball player. Stay down.
As long as you remembered it and didn't do it next time.
Yeah.
You mentioned a second ago that you've just gotten better. And you gave an interview recently with NBC Sports Chicago. You said, I think I've definitely gotten better from those years, just mentality-wise and physically being in a better place. I'm smarter and better now. And this is something that I wanted to ask you about, the smarter component. Obviously, you work on your game. There's something that happens through game experience. But in terms of the basketball intelligence component, how has that sort of manifested itself on the court?
I think it's just experience, seeing different coverages and just for me, example, I played the 4 my first 4 years of my career and then played 3 and it's totally different. So kind of see things differently. And of course, on the defensive end too, kind of made me learn new stuff that made me a better player. Like I was guarding perimeter players and then I get hit by a screen and nobody calls it. And I'm back at the 4. I'm like, I might need to call this screen out. So because I know how hard it is now if you don't know where it's coming from. So stuff like that, just to see both sides of it. And then, of course, this is my 6th year in the league. So kind of seeing those different play styles against me, that's helped me for sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think your last year in Chicago, you came off the bench some. Billy has talked about this a little bit. He sort of moved you that year even and had you play a little bit of 3. But when you got traded to Cleveland, was there any part of you that was like, how is this going to work? I mean, I remember, especially early on, you guys were playing a ton of zone with you, Evan, and J.A. on the back line. But were you at all concerned when that trade first happened about just how it would all mesh together?
Yeah, we didn't really know what to expect. We bunch of young guys coming in, and we had like 8 7-footers in our training camp roster or something like that. And we were playing really big basketball. So we were kind of trying to figure it out. But I remember it was preseason still. Me and Kayla were coming off the bench and I was playing the 4. And then JB came up to me at some point, we need you on the court. And can you guard Chris Paul tonight? And that's how it kind of started. That I was moved to the 3.
That's amazing.
How did that go? How did that first night against Chris go?
I was going to ask the same thing.
Yeah, I was kind of laughing about it. And then he was like, I noticed that he just has a serious face. So like, oh, you're actually asking me to guard him? And then I guess it was just a lot of possessions ended up in pick and rolls. Then we switched with me and Evan or me and J.A. and kind of get rid of that mismatch because they can guard the perimeter as well. So I think that's how it kind of started. And then it became really fun. It was a challenge. They put me on matchups that I never thought I would be on, but you take it as a challenge and try to fight through those days. So
you'll have to forgive me because I'm much older than you and my brain doesn't work as well. My memory's not as good. But I had totally forgotten that you were in the Jimmy Butler trade essentially. And obviously the Bulls get the 7th pick in the Jimmy Butler trade. I think it was Justin Patton, 16th pick, what was exchanged. Chris Dunn and Zach LaVine come to Chicago. Jimmy goes to Minnesota. When did you sort of know all that was going down before the draft?
I didn't really know until I think it was like a couple minutes on the clock that my agent started whispering me that like this might happen. I think you're going to Chicago, but I'm not sure. And it was kind of nerve-wracking moment. Just obviously I have no idea what's going to happen. I think I had solid workouts and teams before the 7th pick and then teams after. So I had no idea what's going to happen. And then like, I think for sure I knew like 20, 30 seconds before that we got the text that welcome to Chicago or something like that. So it was a surreal moment, definitely.
I think every player, well, not every player, but the majority of players in their own personal career and their own sort of personal journey have the realization and the sort of moment where they realize that the NBA is a business. And I was thinking about you because you've been traded. This is your 6th year. You've been traded 3 times. You played for 5 head coaches, and it's some guys might go 15 years before they get traded, or might start with the head coach, play 7 years. Have you ever sort of grappled with that inconsistency in your career? Not your play. I'm just saying this is all you've sort of known is different coaches, different places. Have you ever thought about that or reflected on that?
Not really. I think I just realized the business side of it because all the guys that I got the most comfortable with kind of talking, just creating a relationship, they all just got traded right away. And they're like, oh, he's gone now. I remember my rookie year, we were kind of going through similar life situation with our first kids being born with Justin Holiday around the same time. And then we sitting right next to him playing and can talk all about that stuff, like family stuff, how everything's going to work out. And then boom, he's traded to Memphis. And that happened to a couple of teammates of mine. So then it's kind of like, oh, like you want to build a relationship with these guys, but then they can be gone just like that. So I think that's the biggest thing that is, even instead of the coaching changes. So
I was going to ask about your start in Chicago. You had a historic start there. So basketball wise, obviously, you were to the US for college for a year, but what was the transition like in terms of the game itself, just figuring it out? We talked a little bit about this with Luka as well, about just like comparing playing in Europe versus the NBA. Did you find it to be a challenge at first? Obviously you played great, but like, what was your initial reaction to the speed of the league?
It was an adjustment period for sure. Just seeing the guys for the first time, really. I remember my rookie year, we played against New Orleans, and it was Rondo coming off pick and roll. I'm on the bench. I'm like, damn, that's a quick guy right there who wasn't even known to be the fastest guy in the league probably at that point. But just it took me some time to get used to the speed of the game. I think that's the big thing. Then now it's normal. Obviously, you see those guys every day, but it took me definitely some time to realize that part of the game as well. And they're all grown men, obviously. I'm coming in as a skinny 220-pound 7-footer.
Yeah, so you played for Hoiberg your first year, and then Hoiberg gets fired 24 games into the season. Jim Boylen takes over. And this is a period of time in Chicago Bulls basketball that I've genuinely always been curious about. Casey, I think it was Casey Johnson, but I know it was a Bulls beat writer, reported that there was almost a full-blown mutiny, that the players were going to stage a boycott because of would describe it as working conditions in the same way that a normal person in a normal job just walks out of their office. And then Jim Boylen formed a leadership council. What exactly happened with that practice?
Oh, with that practice?
Yeah.
I remember we experienced the highs and lows of NBA basketball. We had a back-to-back. We won the first game, the game winner, and then we lose by a franchise record. I think we lost to Boston by like 56 at home on the second night of a back-to-back. And then the starters got pulled out of the game because we were getting ready to practice tomorrow. And then, I mean, we had the adjustment period with the practices, with the kind of being harder, getting taped all the time. And then we knew that it's going to be a hard practice after a back-to-back. And then there started talks that we're not going. And then it ended up being a situation that we were standing in the parking lot when the practice was supposed to start. And we're like, what are we doing? And now we just got to stick together. And then we went into the facility, put our practice gear on, and had a team meeting, and everything kind of started to sort out after that. But this is my second year in the league. So I'm just coming back. I was hurt my first 3 months of my second year. I just came back with an injury and still trying to figure out. And that's kind of part like NBA. Is this what it is? And so it's a weird time to look back.
I like the sort of the visualization of you guys standing out in the parking lot, unable to come to a unanimous decision on what you're supposed to do, and then all having the realization that you're all fucked because you're late for practice, and you're like, all right.
The only thing we can do is just stick together now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. By the way, an old head like me would say you guys, your generation of players so soft because you're unwilling to practice after back-to-back. Actually, I didn't even know it was legal to practice after back-to-back. I thought that was like universal across the league.
So that's how it started. That's how it started. Like, we're not allowed to practice. And then our reps started to call the union, like, no, you guys are allowed to practice. It's just kind of you normally don't practice, but you're allowed to practice. And that's what we were talking about in the parking lot. Like, it is not a rule. Like, we can still practice, and now we're just in it together. So
did you feel going to the Bulls, who didn't have a ton of success after Jordan up until when Tibbs got there, and then there was sort of a transition period. Did you feel going to that franchise, did you feel pressure and being a high draft pick?
Yeah, just being the high draft pick, I think that was I wasn't really worried about that. I didn't even know what to expect, but just you could tell when I got to Chicago that even though it hasn't been a championship in a while, but that's the expectations of the city. That's what I felt like, that even though we're kind of going, guys are getting traded, we got a young team, and still feel like when we walk into the facility, people expect us to be great. So I think that's what I felt right away.
Did you feel, and I think you've talked about this a little bit publicly, but did you feel like your just on the court role changed, and that probably led to, some of the struggles you had in years 2 and 3, just in terms of like your touches?
Yeah, I think that was part of it. I thought of it at least, and I'm the guy who always just tries to figure it out, and no matter what role you're playing, and you just got to figure it out. And then I was starting to put, with less touches, I was shooting less in my third year, and then I felt like, well, I'm getting less shots, so I better make these count. I put more pressure on myself, and it just kept missing and missing. And then at some point, it just clicked. I don't care if I miss anymore, and that's when kind of things got better for me. Like I don't care I'm just gonna shoot this, and it's gonna go in eventually. So that kind of took me like 2 months of just struggling in the beginning of my third year.
Yeah, I love the shooter's mentality. Are you a sarcastic person? Do you have a dry sense of humor?
I think so. There's
Okay.
times that I crack some jokes that guys don't even get. So
Because oftentimes when European players give interviews to their, a news station in their home country or their hometown or whatever, and then it gets translated over and then it ends up on Hoops Hype. I feel like some things get lost in translation. Like it's not, a phrase that you maybe said means one thing in your country and then, or in your language, in your language. And then, when you Google translate it, it means another thing. But you gave an all-time interview, that
I think I know it.
that just reeked of sarcasm, where you went to, I don't know if it was Billy or Jim, but you went to them and you were like, hey, last year I averaged 80 touches a game. This year I'm averaging 40 touches a game. I feel like I'm not as involved. And the response the coach gave was, you need to get more defensive rebounds. And you said, well, it's really fucking hard to get 40 defensive rebounds a game. How am I supposed to make up that difference?
Yeah. I remember this was, I think it was when COVID shut everything down. I think that's when I did it, because I remember I had so much time at home and there was a Finnish podcast. I did like a 3-hour interview. It just had a very relaxed conversation and just kept joking about that stuff. And then there's some guys who translated the whole 3-hour interview and then it got lost. I remember laughing with him about that specific story. And then it got translated on a tweet and now it's a serious thing. And I'm having breakfast with Jim Boylen during the summer and he's like, oh, I'm still mad about that 40 rebounds comment. I know what I was.
It was pretty slick.
Yeah.
Pretty slick. With this team, with Will specifically, and I listened to some of his interviews. Actually, a friend sent me a press conference that he did on YouTube, and I think one of the things that he talks about a lot, he talked about that in press conference, was just giving players freedom and allowing them to play in sort of a clear headspace and encouraging that and not really messing with them on the court. And maybe he'll say something to you when you get back to the bench, but when you're on the court, he wants you to have sort of a clear headspace, which I think as a player, I would love that in a coach. Did you know Will at all? Do you remember your first sort of conversations with him after? I don't remember when he got the job, but I think he got the job prior to you getting, yes, because he talked to Donovan. So he got the job prior to you getting traded to the Jazz. But what were your early conversations with Will like?
Yeah, I mean, the trade happened the night before our first game of Eurobasket. So I was locked in for a tournament. And then the trade happened all of a sudden. I'll say it was a little emotional, like first time getting traded. I don't really expect it. And we thought we found a home in Cleveland. So it was a little tough. And some random American number called FaceTimes me. And I'm like, I'm not ready to pick up this phone. So I actually didn't pick up his first phone call, but then I called him right after. And that's when, I mean, it was just a brief introduction after that, but he let me focus on the international play. And then first, when I got to Utah, it was more about what you did in the EuroBasket. I want that same version here. So it encouraged me. And you talk about the confidence, just knowing that your coach wants you to play that way, the way I was playing last couple months. So I think that's what made it easier for me. And that what you said about our team too, I think it's been that the whole time. We play defense and then we have a ton of guys that can sometimes go wild on offense, but that's kind of what we need at times. So he talked about playing a little chaotic, and I think that's when we've been at our best.
We were talking just now and then obviously earlier about just the talent level on the team. Do you think that there's I don't know if you call it a chip on your shoulder or just a level of kind of anger at the idea that like everyone is going into the season being like, these guys are tanking, like they're trying to get a top pick, and obviously you came out and did the complete opposite?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. And I talked about, we went through that with Cleveland too last year. Kind of everybody said we're going to be terrible, and then we came out hot and I don't know, what we were like top 3 seed in January or whatever. And kind of knowing that, and then coming back here and seeing that we got good players and good staff around us, that we can make some noise. So we just got to get the reps in and get on the same page. So I think that chip on the shoulder, everybody kind of has that. We have a lot of guys that I think they see themselves like overlooked. And then, like I talked about earlier, the ton of new guys coming in from different places. It feels like we have a so-called revenge game every other day because we've been making so many trades. We played the Bulls last night. The previous home game was against Detroit with Kelly Olynyk, and so that's how it feels like. So I think everybody kind of has that, trying to prove themselves this year. So.
What about for you? Do you feel that sense of revenge, not just towards the Bulls or towards Cleveland? I don't mean that necessarily, but just in terms of, I always think of Keon Dooling. Keon Dooling was one of the most charismatic, energetic teammates I ever had. I remember in a team meeting one time, going around the room, and his thing was like, "They didn't want you. We're playing against. They didn't want you. They traded you. They didn't want you." And anytime anybody would sort of have a good game, that was his like go-to phrase on the bench. You know what I mean? It was like carry that chip with you.
Yeah, I'm not a angry person.
You're not Keon. You're not Keon Dooling.
Yeah, but it's some extra motivation to play at your best and win the game against your previous team. But I don't really carry that over from like, I think I'm in the place I'm supposed to be right now. So I don't really look back at that. But it's cool to go against your old teammates and friends and then just go out inside the lines and compete. So definitely brings the best out of you when you play those type of games. But it's not like I have such anger or anything like that towards them. So.
You've gone off a bunch this year so far. Have you had a favorite either performance or even just like an individual matchup? Like I was watching, you guys beat them pretty badly, but you and Ja, you guys both went off when you beat them a couple of weeks ago. Have you had a game where you were like, oh yeah, this is exactly what my sort of ideal Lauri experience should be every night if in a perfect world?
I don't think there's been a game like I've just really looked at that way, but I think when we played, I haven't even been to the playoffs, but I've heard people say they felt like a playoff game when we played against Phoenix the other night. I had my career high 38 and won the game. We won the game. That's what I'm saying. But it was really a fun game, and just see kind of Phoenix one of the top teams in the conference, and just go toe to toe with them until the last second. So it was pretty cool experience, and just that's where you want to. I kind of got the feeling that we won these games all the time. It was so much fun to play that level of basketball game. So we just have to pick it up now. We've lost 5 straight, so we're trying to turn it back and get back to that. But yeah, that was one of the moments this year.
Yeah, I watched that on YouTube earlier. Well, your full game highlights on YouTube. I've watched you guys probably 5 or 6 times this year. One of the things that really stands out to me about your game is your cutting, not just your off-ball movement, but your actual cutting. You're very smart when you know a team is switching, of sort of slipping that screen, getting behind the defense. I think Mikal Bridges does this really well as well. There's a few guys in the league that really do it well. And then you sort of create an advantage because then you have a smaller guy on you, or you have a clear lane to the basket. But the cutting out of pick and rolls, I mean, Phoenix game was a great example of that. You did it again last night against the Bulls. I don't remember you doing that as much earlier in your career. Is that a byproduct of Will and his coaching staff, the personnel on the Jazz? Because it does seem like that's become a real big part of your game right now.
Yeah, definitely. We work on that too. Just a lot in practice to slip under the screen, and nowadays everybody is switching, so we get a lot of reps at it. And just we are playing with the bigger lineup, so I think that's kind of my advantage too, to get the switch and seal the smaller guys. Because like, yeah, I can handle the ball, but I wouldn't say that's my biggest strong suit, just coming off pick and roll and creating ton. I mean, yeah, at least. But so I've been kind of looking at cutting and slipping to the rim, that kind of movement. And we have guys that are willing and capable passers, so it's been really easy to kind of mix that in. So I've been looking at that as my kind of way to get an easy bucket every now and then.
I was just going to ask about the West. JJ and I have talked about this a bunch. The level of parity in the West, and the idea even that you guys can go from 1 to 9 in a week, and maybe this time next week you'll be back at 1. You know what I mean? Just how close everybody is. How are you managing that? Just kind of not mentally, but just in terms of like you're planning this out, and you're like every night you got a tough matchup. You know what I mean? You're never walking into a game where you're like, oh yeah, we have this. It's like everybody's sort of coming at you all the time.
Yeah, well, it's not like we look at the standings all the time in November.
Yeah, that's true.
I think they'll start to matter a little bit later on, but I mean, it was definitely brings you a little extra motivation being tied with Portland, going into their house and trying to get the 1 seed, and so it's been fun. And then, like you said, I don't even know what seeding we are right now. I haven't looked since we've lost 5 straight, but I mean, we've got plenty of time to turn back around. So it's a fun to have that kind of competitive league. And there's not, like you said, there's no easy games. I think every night you got to bring your A game, because there's so many teams. They might not be as good with their record, but everybody's capable of getting hot and finding their rhythm early on in the game. Then it's just hard to stop. So we just got to be ready to bring it every night, because literally anybody can beat you.
I like that though. The input, right? You can control what your input is and how that affects your mentality. It's like, it's a terrible analogy, but stock market's going up. Might as well look at your bank account. Stock market's going down. Why look? Why look? Yeah. It's gonna make me mad. It's gonna ruin my day. It's gonna go up and down. Why? Who fucking cares? Before we let you go, I know earlier, Tommy had asked you about, players that had an influence on you. You said Kobe and D Wade, later on Dirk, when you realized that you were a footer. But I wanted to get your perspective on the level of international play right now, with so many high-level players, not only being MVP caliber players like a Luka, but having won like Jokic or like Giannis.
Last 4, right?
Yeah, and just sort of the influence and sort of the pride that the international players are taking right now in the NBA.
I mean, it's great to see. Just obviously carry that pride with me, just being the only guy from Finland being in the NBA, kind of trying to represent your country every night you go out, and then seeing that there's a lot of guys doing the same thing, and it connects us to, kind of feels like we're from the same country. You say hi after every game because we're from the same continent. So it's kind of funny thing to see, but I mean, it's great to see that basketball is growing, and just more and more great players are coming from all over the world, really, not just from Europe or like that, but it's great to see.
Lauri, we appreciate the time. Tommy, Jason, and I, we are big fans of you. We're also big basketball fans, and we appreciate how the Jazz are playing. We hope you guys get healthy, get back on the winning side. It's been a lot of fun to watch you and the Jazz play so far this season. So we're rooting for you guys, and we appreciate the time, brother.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.